Hello and welcome to the Oddschecker Betting Show. I'm your host, George Elek, and I'm joined by Ed Quigley and Andy Holding as we look ahead to this weekend's racing at Sandown and at Aintree. It is, of course, the Tingle Creek on Saturday, but plenty of cracking racing across the two cards. We'll have a quick look at the stuff over in Ireland on Sunday as well. Andy, at this time of year, and especially after the couple of weeks that we've had with the nonsense at Ascot, I think we've got to start any National Hunt preview at this stage with a chat about the weather and the rain and the ground. How's it looking for both? I haven't watched a race for the last 2 days because of fog. It feels like recently. What's the going going to be like at Aintree and Sandown?
Pretty much the same, I think. I think high pressure's set to dominate all the way through to at least Sundays. So as far as I could see, unless Ed's got any updates. I looked yesterday night. So yeah, it all looks set for the weekend. The one thing, obviously, with those dank, sort of misty conditions when the sun doesn't come out, it usually means that the moisture is usually kept into the ground. So can't see it sort of drying out and places going ridiculous. But obviously we've got potential, as we did last weekend, of one or two defectors if sets of connections or jockeys walk the track and they're not happy with what's underfoot. But hopefully, at least we won't get silly match races or walkovers or something like that. And we do see a little bit of quality racing at Sandown. You know, when you've got at least two or three horses that are, you know, well above average.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Ed, how are things at Cheltenham? Hope you were there a couple of weeks ago, and then obviously more cracking racing there next weekend.
Yeah, I mean, there's it's fog galore here. I was actually trying to start my Christmas shopping, so I emphasise start the Christmas shopping, but kind of abandoned sticks really. Yeah, the visibility is about 5 yards here. It's and obviously Wincanton had some troubles today, didn't they, with the fog, and you haven't been able to see much. It's quite interesting actually. I remember an old story about horses and fog. Involves Alan King actually. I was going back through, I don't know, it came up on a show I was on the other day, but going back to 2009, there was a race in Exeter. There was a horse called Bensalem. I don't know if you remember him. Of course, he won the what was the ultimate at the Cheltenham Festival, and was a pretty good horse in his pomp, but he was beaten off at Exeter. And I think quite a few people were disappointed, including connections. But the official line when he came in to give his explanation to the stewards was that the horse did not handle the fog. And I think it says in the asterisks afterwards, the stewards noted Mr. Alan King's explanation and have put it on record for future reference. So this could be the new excuse. You know, don't worry about the ground. Don't worry about this, that, the other, the amount of water. The fog comes out. That could give Seven Barrows another string to the bow, couldn't it, in regards to taking horses out of races. But yeah, did not handle the fog. I haven't heard that one for a while.
I certainly don't handle fog either. So that's something that we have in common. Let's get into the races. We're going to go through the final four races on the card on Saturday at Sandown, starting with the Henry VIII Novice Chase. And then we'll go across to Aintree and have a look at the Many Clouds and the Becher and a couple of other things as well. Do download the Oddschecker app, where you can find the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, place terms, and the best tipsters straight to your app every single morning of racing as well. So do go and download that. But we'll start with the 145. The Close Brothers Henry VIII Novice Chase, where John Bon is the 4-11 favourite ahead of Boot Hill at 7-2. Unexpected Party 12-1 for the Skelton team, who are making a bit of a good habit of winning big races so far this season, but would be a bit of an upset if they manage it here. And Honor de Jean is 100-1. Andy, you put up Boot Hill for the win a couple of weekends ago, so I'll come straight to you here for this one.
Yeah, he's an extremely talented horse, Boot Hill, and the time figure that he produced when he won at Ascot suggests that he was probably a little bit better than what I originally thought. And I thought, you know, his form going into Ascot was pretty good anyway. And he beat a horse of Paul Burns, So Scottish, who was also seemingly well handicapped. I know Paul fancied his chances that day. So I think it's a pretty good race. And put it this way, I put the two races up side by side. I think it's Cool Cody, wasn't it? Who won over 2.5 miles and against the Boot Hill race. If you set the race off from the first fence in the back straight to the winning line, there was 13 seconds difference in favour of Boot Hill. So That suggests
Wow.
he's probably run to at least the mark that the handicap has given him, 147, if not more, using Cool Cody as a guide. So I think we're dealing with a sensational piece of handicap form. I think that race will stand the test in the next few months. I had originally thought, off the back of that, what could I do with Boot Hill going forward? Is he good enough to be an Arkle horse? Because he is in the Arkle betting. He's not got a traditional Arkle profile, but he's still a novice going into this season. Or do I look towards the handicap, the Grand Annual? Because there's a good chance he might end up there. A lot depends, of course, how he gets on against John Bon, and whether that handicap mark gets altered or not. Put it this way, I do think he will give John Bon more than enough to think about here. I'm not saying he'll definitely beat John Bon, because I've got a huge amount of respect for Nicky Henderson's horse, who couldn't have done any more than he did in beating two good horses at Warwick on his chasing debut. But mark my words, Boot Hill, he's a better horse than the market suggests, and I don't think this will be a total cakewalk.
And is it, looking at the prices now, John Bon is the 2-1 favourite for the Arkle. Boot Hill is 33-1, which suggests that there's a big chunk of that price is assuming that there are other targets in mind. Otherwise, it's a ludicrous price if it's accepted that he's going to the Arkle. Surely, if the Grand Annual is the aim, then running him in a forerunner affair against John Bon is not a particularly good way to go to preserve your handicap mark.
I don't think Harry Fry's probably even thinking of that. I think he'll probably assess it after the new year and look where they're at, and particularly on Saturday, and take a view of how he performs against John Bon. I mean, if he does go and beat John Bon, then he clearly has got an Arkle candidate, so handicap's off the table. But he's always got that to fall back on if it doesn't work out. But all I'm saying is I have these a lot closer together, certainly on the numbers, than the market does. So it'd just be fascinating to see how it pans out. Boot Hill has got the one thing in his favour. He's obviously proven right-handed and at a very strong pace. That Ascot pace was lightning quick. They went a real good gallop. So he's used to running against handicappers who know the time of day. So he's got the experience. He's got the requisite qualities to certainly, press and to test John Bon. There's no way John Bon will just go out here and float along and win easily. Boot Hill, if he stays on his feet, will be bang there.
Enough for you to have a bet at 7-2?
I actually already backed. I backed him early on in the week at 4-1 in the hope that John Bon wouldn't run. I was trying to be clever because now John Bon lines up, so I've got it anti-post. If John Bon doesn't run, they pull it out because of the ground, then great. But I'll still fancy my chances anyway. I've certainly got a puncher's chance anyway of landing the bet.
Yeah, Boot Hill there, 7-2. The selection for Andy. Ed, it doesn't look a great betting heat, I guess, unless you're happy to take a punt on Boot Hill being much better than what we've seen so far as Andy is. How do you see the race?
Yeah, I'd echo a lot of what Andy says. I mean, it's not a race to particularly get me giddy with excitement. I can't really see the two outsiders getting involved. It looks a match. I agree in the sense that I think Boot Hill will at least give John Bon something to think about. I don't think this would be a stroll in the park, but I just think John Bon looks to have that bit of X factor over fences. And all in all, a bit of an underwhelming race. In truth, I think John Bon will win comfortably. I get that the wider point would be interesting in the sense that you say you wouldn't normally associate Harry Fry with going down the handicap route, but if you wanted to smuggle Boot Hill into the Grand Annual off 144 or something, the last thing he probably wants to do is end up the backside of John Bon here in a ding dong, because it probably wouldn't do, it doesn't kind of guarantee him top level graded success, and he probably smokes his handicap mark to some extent for the for future targets. But all in all, I think John Bon will win. I expect Boot Hill to be on the scene and go down as a plucky loser.
On then to the 220, and this is the handicap hurdle over 2 miles, and Love Envoy is the 15-8 favourite ahead of En Public at 9-2. Playful Saint 6-1. Hermes Boy is 8-1, 10-1 Friend or Foe. Nayati 12-1 with Marator 33-1 bar. Ed, we give you a bit of a hospital pass going second in a 4-runner race with a 3-on favourite in the first, so we'll let you take over here in a second.
Yeah, I'm straightforward answers. I don't really know what I'm doing on here. I think it's a case of what's the phrase? Is it once bitten, twice shy? Well, last weekend I thought Long Press was the lay of the millennium. I thought on the seasonal reappearance off 164 on good ground with the owner saying he'll definitely need the run. On a side point, I mean, how good was that from non-press? I think that was absolutely fantastic. And to a lesser extent here, but I got a similar kind of theory with Love Envoy in the sense that, you know, off 139, first time out on ground, which, I mean, was it going to be good to soft at best? As you say, there's not a lot of rain around. All her form has come in an absolute bog, hasn't it? I mean, officially, she's won soft, heavy. She did win on good to soft, but that was in a Leicester Maiden hurdle, you know, where a class got her through. She seems incredibly short for me. I've seen there's a lot of kind of 11 to 8 flying around. All in all, I want to get her beaten. I'm probably just going to look to lay Love Envoy, I think is going to be the angle in here, because I'm not bowled away by what it is that's going to get her beaten. But I've got the rest of the field running for me at 8 to 11. I'll take that, if you see what I'm saying. I think Love Envoy in an absolute bog. She really comes into her own, and clearly she's got Sandown form. But if the ground does continue to dry up, that would have to be a major worry for me. And I mean, it's not just me. I mean, the connections have said it themselves. But then, as I said, I'm going to start calling it like the long press syndrome, because that's what everyone said last week. And I could not believe what I was watching, to be honest with you. I thought he'd blow up and fall in a hole. But so, yeah, I'm applying similar kind of logic here. They can't all win. I'm going to take on Love Envoy with no rain clouds. I'm reliably informed by Michael Fish, a.k.a. Andy Holding. Yeah, it's the Surrey Riviera in the area. It's going to be lovely ground, and Love Envoy will just be tap for toe. So I'm laying Love Envoy. That is my bottom line.
Laying Love Envoy to play for Ed. Andy?
I wouldn't probably be as bold as Ed and stand against Love Envoy, because she is potentially incredibly well treated. I still don't know how she's got a mark 139. I don't know how the handicappers worked that out. She beat a very good field at Cheltenham, probably one of the most eye-catching performances of the whole week for me, the way she went through that mare's novices race. And if you look at the form so far this season, there's been a whole host of horses that have come out and shanked the form already, you know, proper class horses as well that were well and truly beat. I'm not sure what her ultimate target is. Probably the mare's hurdle at the festival. I could presume that's the only race that she's sort of eligible for. They'll obviously want to stretch her out over 2.5 miles at some stage this season. She tried it last year and she got beat by Brandy Love, but there's certainly nothing lost in defeat there at the end of a hard season. Look, I think she's fitting well, she'll probably win. But I'm like Ed, I'm not here to be tipping up 6-4 favourites every single time we look at a race. I was quite taken by Nayati. I'm going to stick up for my local track here. I saw him win the other day, and it was a good race. I know there was quite a few fancied horses in there, and he beat a horse called Georgie Saint. Now Georgie Saint, as we speak, has either ran or has runs later on today. So I'll be hopeful of Georgie Saint franking that form, because I got a very good time figure for that race, or we did. Sorry, I don't actually do the numbers for our service. I just do the sectional. So back to the sectionals with the overall time that my colleague did. I reckon that Bangor race is pretty good, and I like the way this horse went through that race and hit the line. It's got to be fairly significant that Donald McCain's taking one down south. He doesn't do very much nowadays. He tends to stick to his own patch. So yeah, if Love Envoy comes unstuck, then maybe Nayati might be the each way alternative.
Nayati, they're the selection for Andy. 12-1 best price. That's with Hills, Bet Victor, Coral, and Unibet. On to the big race of the weekend. Shishkin heads up the market in the Tingle Creek. We've got Shishkin 11-10, Greaneteen 2-1, Edwardstone 7-1, Gentleman de Me 10-1, Funambule Sivola 25-1, and Dunvegan 100-1. Really interesting, this, isn't it, Andy? With the profile of the two horses at the top end of the market. Shishkin, the proven performer, looking to bounce back after, effectively a no-show at Cheltenham, and then Greaneteen, the massively improving horse who's been pretty breathtaking in terms of what he's done in the last two starts. If you were to go back to, February and say these two would be meeting in the Tingle Creek and it would be 11-10, 2-1, it would have been pretty surprising. But where do you see the value with the market as it is now with the 6 runners?
Well, the first thing to say, I think this is a throwback to yesteryear, isn't it? When we had a genuine, proper Tingle Creek with more than 1 or 2 horses in with a squeak. In recent times, we have been rather let down by either one horse not making it, etc., 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 etc. I think the only one missing here is an Ergamine, and we'd have the full house. You'd almost have a replica of what's going to happen in the Champion Chase next season. But I genuinely feel as though, under the conditions that are likely to be at Sandown on Saturday, and I think there's going to be a marked difference, as there often is on the chase track and the hurdle track. Ed pointed out that Love Envoy might struggle on quicker ground, but if you look at what the clerk of the course is saying, Andrew Cooper, he's saying it is soft all over on that inside track, and don't forget that's heavily watered throughout the summer, so that'll remain soft. It'll definitely suit Harry Fry's mare, but on the chase track it's going to be quick, and it's almost going to be quick enough for perhaps connections of Shishkin to get a little bit windy, maybe come Saturday. But whichever way you strip this down, I think Greaneteen will win, because I think he's the quicker horse. He's had the run as well. I mean, don't forget he won this race very, very easy last year. And I know he got beat by Shishkin at Kempton, but that wouldn't have been his ground. He's not a horse that would go and slog around in a bog, and it can get pretty testing at Kempton. And he just couldn't. He got wheel spin. He just couldn't. He didn't have the acceleration and the power that Shishkin has got. But on good ground, when he's had a run under his belt, I think this will be a totally different ball game. I think they'll have Edwardstone off his feet as well, and he can ride him, Harry Cobden, which way he wants here, because he's got Gentleman to Me in the race. Anyone who knows Gentleman to Me and has seen him run, there's only one way of going with him, that's flat out. So if he didn't want to make the running, which he doesn't have to, he'll just sit in behind. So I see Gentleman to Me leading, Greaneteen just literally sitting a length or 2 in behind, popping away. And then when it comes to quickening down to the pond, and from that point onwards, I think Greaneteen will have the better turn of foot on the ground. So I think he's probably one of the best value bets of the weekend. I'm surprised he's not favourite.
Oh, wow. Big price, strong fancy there from Andy. Ed, how do you see it?
I'm with Andy. Yeah, I'm team Greaneteen here. I'm probably not quite as strong as Andy in the sense that obviously if this Shishkin can turn up who beat an Ergamine in the Clarence House, then they're all going to be playing catch up. But again, just be interested in this ground. It ties my head in knots. Now I'm getting worried whether I need to lay the Harry Fry mare. If it's a bog on one track and it's like a runway on the other, we just need a bit of fog just to complete the set, don't we? Really. Yeah. All in all, I think Greaneteen. It was an astonishing comeback in the Holden Gold Cup. I mean, you could perhaps crab the form a little bit on the strictest sense to say, oh, what did this horse do in behind? And third time lucky made a Horlicks 3 out and then hasn't exactly advertised the form since. But to win any handicap off 168 takes some doing. And I mean, he fairly trounced them, didn't he? If you remember rightly, going back 12 months ago, Greaneteen was stuffed in the Holden Gold Cup before coming on to win this as an unconsidered 12-1 poke. Well, yeah, none of those prices are flying around there. And as you say, George, 15-8, 2-1 to beat Shishkin. If you'd said that 6 months or so ago, we'd all fallen over laughing. So look, it's a funny one because look, a lot's still got to be taken on trust with Shishkin. That we do still have Shishkin, if that makes sense. You know, there was, I don't know whether it's a back-fitted story, but the official line was there was a bone problem post the Champion Chase. Nicky Anderson said forget the ground, although it wasn't ideal. The horse was beaten after 2 fences, and he's got to come back on his A game on ground, which is definitely in Greaneteen's favour. Greaneteen, we know, absolutely loves Sandown. I mean, he really is at home at this venue, isn't he? He's becoming like the new Twist Magic for Paul Nicholls of a horse of a decade or so ago. So, yeah, all in all, I just think I was astonished by that Greaneteen comeback. I know Nicholls said before the Holden Gold Cup, he said that we've got him a bit straighter than last year, but there's probably still a bit to work on. And to win off 168 on his seasonal reappearance, now returning to his happy hunting ground. I put it this way, I wouldn't be shocked. Greaneteen wins this, beats Shishkin, but then Shishkin drifts to a nice price or a backable price to win the Champion Chase, and I'll probably get involved. I don't fancy Edwardstone at all. I wouldn't be shocked. I think they might be using this to test the water. I wouldn't be shocked if they went the Ryanair Chase route after this. There's been a few murmurs from the King team coming out. It's the 2 mile division looks hot enough, doesn't it? For argument's sake, Shishkin comes back on song, Greaneteen. You've got Fernie Hollow waiting to come back. You've already got an Ergamine, Gentleman to Me, Shaka Poursoir. This 2 mile division looks chaos. The 2.5 mile division, well, Alaho's officially on the sidelines injured. That looks rife for something to come through. So I think that, the King team aren't silly. And there's been a few quotes coming out of the stable in the last couple of weeks that, when using this, then we may look to go up and trip. It wouldn't shock me at all if he was taken off his feet here. He stays up the hill into third, beating 8 or 10 lengths, and they then pursue an intermediate trip route. So, I got Greaneteen to beat Shishkin. I don't fancy the 2 outsiders. Gentleman to Me, a little bit of a joker in the pack, in the sense that he could really take to Sandown. We may absolutely hate it. I don't quite know which way I'm going to go with him yet. Either way, it was a bit of a disappointing comeback run, wasn't it? I mean, he was beaten at the time he unseated. But, Greaneteen to beat Shishkin. That's my forecast. And I might keep an eye on Edwardstone with a view of getting involved in the Ryanair chase afterwards, and the view of getting involved with Shishkin in the champion chase afterwards as well.
There we go. Plenty of anti-post ankles there from Ed, as well as looking at Greaneteen to be the better the prices. On that note, to both of you, at the moment, looking at the champion chase prices, you've got Shishkin 4-1 and Greaneteen 20-1. Is that 20-1 big if we're saying that 2-1's big for that result on Saturday?
Probably is by default, isn't it? The fact that if you thump Shishkin, I mean, he's going to be 5, 6. I mean, God knows, but he's going to be second, or he's going to be third favourite, isn't he? Probably to win the champion chase behind Shishkin and Energamy, depending on how the race unfolds, of course. But yeah, it's just Paul Nicholls has always kind of said, like, sometimes he gets his horses. He says it, like, he's gone on record. It's not all about Cheltenham, and there are other targets. And Sandown clearly really suits Greaneteen. We've seen, how he wins at the April meeting. And how he likes the Tingle Creek. Yeah, I mean, they'd be bonkers not to have a go or go down the champion chase route again. I mean, he ran well in it, didn't he, a couple of seasons ago where he wasn't beaten far. And naturally, if anything turns up and thumps Shishkin this season, their price is going to tumble for a later target as a consequence. So, yeah, it's a fascinating kind of dynamic going on. There's all sorts going on. There is an argument, if you think Greaneteen's going to win, back in for the champion chase, and when he's been Shishkin, then back Shishkin for the champion chase, and as I said, back Edwardstone for the Ryanair in the aftermath. So I think, as well as being a brilliant race in itself, that's the first thing we shouldn't forget. As Andy did touch upon at the top of the show, hopefully they all line up here, and we don't get any late silly non-runners, because it should be a bit of a classic in itself. But I do fancy Greaneteen, like Andy, just to have a bit too much zip, and he does love it round here, and he'll be my selection.
There we go. Andy, any thoughts on the future stuff, or should we move on to the last?
Yeah, we'll move on. Yeah.
Okay, let's go straight then to the last at Sandown. The handicap chase over the 3.5 miles. Revels Hill is a 2-1 favourite ahead of Day Saber at 4-1. Quick Wave 9-2. Eclair de Guy 13-2, 14-1 bar those. 11 runners here, Andy. Who takes your fancy at this stage?
Without a shadow of a doubt, the favourite here, Revels Hill. That Your Darling that Ed will probably touch upon in a second or two is a proper piece of kit when he's fresh and he's well, and all everything is working in the right direction. And like I say, the numbers for that race at Ascot the other day were frightening. It was by far and away the best chase race on that particular card. And I just think he bumped into one. I don't know what Ben's going to do with Your Darling further down the line, whether he gives him one more run for Cheltenham or just waits for Cheltenham. But he's a very good horse when he's in that kind of form. And Revels Hill was the only one who offered any resistance at all. He stayed on very takingly from the back of the last, as they say. And for a horse that wants 3 miles, you'd have to say that was an incredibly good effort. I mean, all his best form is over. He won over 2 mile forward, didn't he, last season? Sorry, 3 mile forward, beg your pardon, beating a horse who is, replete with stamina, the Two Amigos. So it's very, very hard to look beyond him. It could be a really good day for the Noel Feely Racing Club. Obviously, they've got Love Envoy and Revels Hill as well. But yeah, unopposable for me, I'm afraid, despite the price.
Unopposable, 2-1, the price as it is with Hills and 365. Ed?
I probably would take him on with Disha Arbor, just on the strength of the Philip Hobbs course form for this horse. He's been to the Esher venue 4 times, form figures of 2 wins and 2 seconds, including when beating was it a nose in this 12 months ago. So clearly loves it here. Brings all his A game to the table with this track. Very much horses for courses. If there was a negative, it wouldn't necessarily be a mark of 142. It'd be more, I would like to see the ground riding a bit on the slow side or the dead side. I think genuine good ground. Could you see him kind of taking off his feet? I know it sounds daft over a race of this nature over 3 miles or 5 furlongs, but he could just get too far behind on a quicker surface where he's left too much to do. But I mean, I was just going back, funny enough, I went back through the Philip Hobbs stable tour, which came out 6 weeks or so ago, just for a bit of reference. And Philip Hobbs has basically said, look, his season revolves around anything where we can get him to Sandown, with the first port of call being here. So look, I think he'll be trained to the minute for this. He's going to have a lot in his favour, loves the venue. It just would be a little bit more rain would have been welcome. But yeah, I'm looking naturally for something at bigger prices to get involved. But like Andy, I say, if you take Revels Hill, Adisha Arbor out of it, I'm not massively blown away by those at the kind of double figure prices. So yeah, I think it rests between the protagonists, and just at twice the price, I would lean towards the Philip Hobbs charge.
Pick your player. Ed De Saba 4-1, Andy Revels Hill 2-1. Covering the top end of the market. Will be interesting to see who comes out on top. Over to Aintree then. Just 2 races we're going to cover at Aintree, starting with the Many Clouds Chase, where Ahoy Senor is the 5-4 favourite, ahead of Sounds Russian and Chantry House at both 11-2. Noble Yates 6-1, Sam Brown 9-1, and Dashel Drasher 14-1. Ed, Ahoy Senor looking to bounce back from that really disappointing run last time out.
Yes, he is. I mean, I was there that day at Wetherby. I was right on the rails by the last fence, really, and I mean, it was chalk and cheese, wasn't it? We've had that good old battle between the old foes of Brave Man's Game and Ahoy Senor, whereas Brave Man's Game was just metronomically devastating and getting from A to B. Ahoy Senor's jumping literally just unravelled, especially on the second circuit. Now, they're saying, you know, perhaps he desperately needed the run, and he did improve a great deal for his seasonal reappearance 12 months ago. I suppose you got to try and pin your hopes on that as well, that kind of angle in that sense, you see what I'm saying, where he I think it was last year, the Colin Parker, he was well beaten at the time he fell, and then went to Newbury and won by distance, didn't he, in the John Frankham Novice Chase. So, look, he may well improve for that outing. All in all, it just looks a bit skinny. Was he around kind of 11-10 or thereabout, 6-5? I know he's been there and done it. I just thought that the price is a bit skinny, considering when you look on official figures, there are others here which are banging in the race with him. I personally, I think Dashel Drash is just totally the wrong price. That would be the angle in here. I don't know how he's the outsider of the field, to be honest with you. On BHA ratings, he's £3 inferior to Ahoy Senor. Due to the penalty structure of this race, he gets £3. So he comes out dead level at the weights. One's 6-5, one's 14-1. Dashel Drasher's won at Aintree. Dashel Drasher loves soft ground. That's something else to point out. It's a lot softer at Aintree than it is down at Sandown on the chase course. I think it's a mixture of soft and good to soft in places, with a few showers on the way as well. So it's not going to be rattling quick by any stretch of the imagination. So I think Dashel Drasher is a bit disrespectful to make him the absolute rag of the field here on his peak, which of course he may not quite be anymore. He is a serious player, and I was delighted with his entry comeback over hurdles. I thought that showed a lot of the fires do still burn. So yeah, all in all, it's a race where I wouldn't be shocked if Ahoy Senor won, but the price isn't doing it for me. Dashel Drasher, as I said, 14-1 seems crackers on the face of it for a horse where someone's wrong. I mean, in theory, in a handicap, they're basically running, getting the same. They'll be off the same weight, and one of them is a monster price here. Chantry House, I can't have at all, despite all the rhetoric and the talk, and he's now grown up to a bigger and better horse than ever, and you wouldn't believe it. And he looks $1 million and all this kind of thing, and yeah, I hear all that, and he's had the wind up, but he's got to give weight away, and his profile is becoming, I mean, a bit hit and miss in recent times, isn't it? There was no obvious excuse in the Gold Cup, in the King George. I mean, he went off favourite. It's amazing to think now. When the Chantry House went off favourite for last season's King George, never went a yard. And in between that, he was kind of he scraped home against Santini when odds on, didn't he, in the Cotswold Chase? So all in all, I'd be against the Nicky Henderson runner. So Dasher Drasher for me. I just think he's the wrong price.
Dasher Drasher 14-1 best price with Paddy's Betfair Sportsbook, Bet Victor, and a couple of others, Betfred included as well. Andy?
I've never been a massive fan of Hoisinho, probably just because he's, I'll say unreliable, but he's a bit of an Oxo horse. I think he'll win, look impressive and suck you in. You think, oh, here we go. And then next time out, he'll do something daft, either pull too hard or jump to his right or make mistakes. And that's what he did on his debut at Weatherby. I think he had a little bit of everything that day. I'm not sure Derek Fox knew what way he was coming or going. So would I want to take 6 to 5, 11 to 10 to find out whether he's the horse we saw last year? Absolutely not. And there's doubts about obviously one or two of the others, with a Trip or what have you. But I'm a massive, massive fan of Sounds Russian. I think I've put this horse up on his last 2 or 3 runs. I cottoned on to him last year, knocking out some good time figures in those very competitive novices handicaps, which I do think are a road to riches. They're just so good to follow because they're often run at really strong paces. And I love the way this horse got the job done. Kelsoni's seasonal reappearance. It was a good test. I was obviously ready for that day. He went off in front and served up a proper gallop throughout. And a lot of horses were really struggling from a long way out. But Sounds Russian came there swinging as if they weren't going fast enough for him. And he wasn't going away. And I just love the way he hit the line. He's bound to improve for the run. He's had 42 days off to recover from that run. And I think Ruth Jefferson's got a really smart horse here. So much so that I have actually had a look at this horse, what price he is for the Gold Cup. I'm probably flying a bit high thinking he's going to be that good. But I say, you take out your Galopin de Champs and your Protectorats, and it's a division that, could probably welcome a horse coming through the ranks. Royal Pagaille did it a season or 2 ago. And obviously, we've got 1 or 2 others as well of a similar ilk. But I do think we're going to see fireworks from him sooner or later in a good race, and this is his chance to do it. So, with the likelihood of Dasher Drasher upsetting the apple cart up front with a Hoisinho, because a Hoisinho would want to lead ideally, but so does Dasher Drasher. This race could set up perfectly for the very strong travelling Sounds Russian.
Yeah, Sounds Russian 11-2 best price. Paddy's Betfair Sportsbook, Bet Victor, and a couple of others as well. And then onto the Becher handicap chase. Guess Killy is 9-2, favourite ahead of Ashtown Lad at 5-1. Captain Kangaroo 9-1, Snow Leopard S 12-1, Hill 16-12s, The Wolf 14-1, 5-Star Getaway 14-1, Dr. Kananga 16-1, Durasha County 16s, Fantastic Ass 18s, 18-1 Recite a Prayer, 20-1 bar those. Andy, over to you.
Well, I think we've got the right favourite on balance. Guess Keeler, who obviously ran in the Grand Sefton. That was over 2.5. The way he stayed on, he looks as though he's crying out for further. So yeah, nothing wrong with that from an informed stable. But I do think this is slightly overpriced here. Hill 16, who ran in that aforementioned Sounds Russian race at Kelso last time out. I flagged up the time figure for that race and the strong nature of that form. And he finished second in this race last year to Snow Leopardess. So obviously connections have targeted that. Sandy Thompson's also in good form. He's had 4 winners from the last 14 runners. Ryan Mania rides the Aintree fences better than most. So I thought he was overpriced at 12-1. And the other one is looking down the bottom. Horse has been sort of targeted for this race. That's 5-Star Getaway, who very much had a quiet stroke eye-catching run at Bangor on his seasonal reappearance. Didn't look as though that day was his Gold Cup, as it were. And I think these big fences will really suit him. I'll offer mark of 132. I'd imagine he'll leave that mark well and truly behind him at some stage this season. So a bit more of a chance taken with him, obviously, because he's yet to prove himself over beyond 3 miles and particularly around these fences, whereas Hill 16 has. But I thought, he's a big enough price to take a chance. So those would be my 2, Hill 16 and 5-Star Getaway.
Yeah, Hill 16, 12-1 with Coral, 5-Star Getaway, 14 to Skybet and Coral as well. Ed, how are you seeing this?
I'm pretty much views are redundant on this now because we were discussing this off air. I was really keen on Caribbean Boy if he was going to run. He was entered. Nicky Henderson said the Grand National is the target for him. I thought he'd run a really good race here, but no, he goes to the Welsh Grand National trial instead, and he doesn't have an entry in the Welsh Grand National. So make of that what you will. I've got no idea what's going on at Seven Barrows, but all in all, in the words of Duncan Bannatyne, I'm out.
Right, Ed's out. I said we'd have a quick look at the racing over in Ireland on Sunday. Plenty of really good stuff. We don't have prices necessarily for all of them, but I know in the Royal Bond, Andy, there was something you wanted to flag up where Champ Keeley is the 11 to 10 favourite ahead of Marine Nationale at 2-1. In the pocket, Sea of Blue 7-1, Irish Point 7-1, 9-1 bar. Are you on the Sea of Blue?
No, which is the Sea of Blue?
It is in the pocket.
That's the Sea of Blue. Yeah, that's the horse. Yeah. If he does run, and I presume by the Sea of Blue that he does, I think he's going to give Champ Keeley plenty to think about, because if the figures that we've got are right from his victory at Wexford, and given the way he won, he's definitely up to this level. Certainly Henry de Bromhead thinks that. I mean, he knocked my eyes out when he got to the front and he quickened away from the back of the second last. I thought, wow, this horse has got some engine. And Joy Machine was back in third, and he obviously locked horns with Facile Vega last season, and he's no mug. But it's one of those races where you're just reluctant to have a bet because you don't know what's going to end up running. Do you take a punt at sort of 7 or 8 to 1 that he does? Willie's got about 4 or 5 entries, and he's obviously got another one for JP as well, Hercule de Soy. So does Willie run 2? Does he run 3? I mean, God, your guess is as good as mine. I wish you had the inside track, but given that there is a bit of activity around in the betting jungle in the pocket, that's good enough for me to suggest he'll run. And I think he's a name that we're going to be conjuring with for a little while now, because I don't think too many UK punters will be zoning in on a maiden hurdle win at Wexford.
You might be right with that one. Ed, were you zoning in on that?
I was zoning out, to be honest with you. To be honest, I was just going back I remember a time I was at a dinner party trying to explain to 2 non-sport, non-betting couple what a Sea of Blue was.
What were you doing hanging out with them?
Well, that's the thing. I was odds checking between the main court and the dessert, and they were just flummoxed when I said there's a Sea of Blue, aye. So that was, but we left soon after. I was in the Uber. But anyway, no, nothing particularly on that race. The Drinmore, it looks like it's going to be 3 Stripe Life, Banbridge, and perhaps the Devil's Coachman, by the way the betting's going, which could be a wonderful punch-up. And then, obviously, other than that, we want to see Honeysuckle come back and wipe the floor of the field and throw a right hook back at Constitution Hill, don't we? And it'd be great to see that mare with all her fires still burning. So, very much looking forward to the Irish coverage on Sunday.
I was going to say, I think the most fascinating race from my perspective, I think the Drinmore could be a special race by the looks of it if we get a decent-sized field, but would be the Juvenile Hurdle. Again, I don't know what's going to run, but we've got Zarak the Brave, Nuzret, Common, Comfort Zone who won last week. And, of course, we've got this Lossy Mouth who's been anti-post favourite for almost a year, isn't it, for the Triumph Hurdle without actually leaving its box. So, again, I think we should be in for a little bit of a treat there. And the Triumph Hurdle market will have a little bit of shake-up. And I'm hopeful that Nuzret will go well, because I've had a few good on him anti-post.
Ed, you had your bet of the weekend that we hadn't mentioned yet. Can you share it with us?
Yeah, I'm going elsewhere, actually. We mustn't forget it's the Peterborough Chase at Huntingdon on Sunday. An absolute cracker. Mr. Fisher wins. Mr. Fisher. Yeah, he has. I'll just go through his profile. He has a horrendous record on seasonal reappearance, and it's almost uncanny when you start going through. Look at his CV. If I very quickly go back to 2018, beaten on his seasonal reappearance, bolted up time after. Go to 2019. Beaten on his seasonal reappearance, went to Cheltenham for the December meeting, bolted up after. You go to 2020, pulled up on seasonal reappearance, then goes to Grade 2, wins on his next start. Then 2021, pulled up, albeit in the King George, but pulled up, and then goes to a Grade 2 at Kempton, the race after, and wins that, beating Eldorado Allen comfortably. So this horse it's an amazing profile, really, of how much that horse really does need his seasonal reappearance. And I think he could be swimming in much calmer waters. I think he was 6 to 1 when I last saw. If I could 100% guarantee Mr. Fisher was running 2.5 miles around Huntingdon, would be absolutely perfect for him. So I'm going to definitely be pulling the trigger on Mr. Fisher if he lines up on Sunday at Huntingdon.
There you go, Mr. Fisher. The selection here 6-1 across the board still, Ed. So go and fill your boots. So hopefully Mr. Fisher does turn up in the Peterborough on Sunday. There we have it, our weekend preview ahead of the racing. We've covered a fair few tracks there, but really focusing in on Sandown and Aintree. Thank you very much, as ever, to Ed and to Andy for sharing their thoughts, insight and tips. Do download the Oddschecker app where you can find the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, place terms, and Andy's tips straight to the app amongst other tipsters straight there as well. And do subscribe to the Oddschecker YouTube channel where you can find plenty of preview content ahead of racing weeklies on there as well, and loads of World Cup stuff as we've still got a couple of weeks to go until the World Cup final, of course. So yeah, do go and check that out and subscribe to the channel there, and you can find all of these on any podcast platform as well. Cheers, guys. Thank you for watching, and as is always the case, please do ensure that you're gambling responsibly.